Hello, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, I'm Brie and I make bookish videos like reading vlogs and other book related content. And today's video, as you can see from the title, is my November wrap up. I have been in a bit, I'm saying a reading slump even though I did read a lot of books. I just feel like I wasn't really excited to be reading like I have been. And I've been on a mission to remedy that. And so I tried to read a lot of just books that I was interested in. I just did mostly, actually all mood reading this month, and I do think that's really helped. And the other thing I tried to do was in my reading vlog that you saw where I read for 24 hours. I also just tried not to rate books as much because I've been recently obsessed with watching Allie's reading vlogs, and she talks about how she feels like she can't be very nuanced when talking about books if she just gives them a star rating. And I felt that way a bit, and so I'm trying to not rate books as well and just give my overall thoughts. And I think that actually really helped me figure out how to talk about them, because I think I put too much pressure into trying to rate the books that I feel like that doesn't accurately represent how I'm feeling about a book. So in this wrap up, I'm not going to tell you my readings, I'm just going to tell you how I felt about them. And I have a reading vlog for some of the books here, but not all of them. So I think I'm just going to start in no particular order. Let's dive in. So I read a total of 12 books this month. One of them I'm going to count, but I have only read half of it, so I just want to talk about it now, and I'll probably finish my full thoughts in the wrap up in December. But it's a nonfiction called Gathering Moss by Robin Wall Kimmerer. I read The Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer, and I loved it. It was my favorite book last year. It's just one of the best nonfictions I've ever read, and it just feels like a love note to nature, and I just really connected with it, and how she writes is just so beautiful. So I picked up Gathering Moss, which is her book about mouses, and I'm about 95 pages through it, and I'm just kind of taking it chapter by chapter, and it's just teaching me so much about mosses that I never knew, and weaving in some personal stories and things like that, which I think she just does so well. And she's an Indigenous author who is also an environmental biologist, and she talks about how she has had to try to balance parts of her Potawatomi heritage and her scientists, and how they actually blend together in a lot of ways, and how she felt that science was very restricting on some of that. And just the way she views the world is just so interesting because it's so scientific but also so steeped in her heritage that I just think it really makes for a beautiful story. So that's one of the books I've been reading. So then I'm just going to talk about these two together because they are part of a series, and I feel like it's a little hard to talk about them separately. So it's The Hollow of Fear and then The Art of Theft. Is that the order it goes in? Yes. So this is the third and fourth book in the Lady Sherlock series, which I read the first one 2018, I think, and then I didn't read the second one until this year, and now I've been flying through them, and I really enjoy them. I think that there's some nitpicky things with them that I don't always love, but for the most part, I just think that they're fun historical mysteries. So this is like a reimagining as if Sherlock Holmes was a woman. There's a whole thing with Moriarty that's weaved into it, and I have been really enjoying that aspect, as well as how Sherry Thomas just takes the original and turns it on its head and looks at things from a different lens. I enjoy the puzzles and things like that as well, and just seeing a woman try to be a detective and how she gets around certain limitations, like women aren't supposed to see dead bodies and things like that, and how she makes that work. So I think this is one of those series that is just a comfort series where they're not my favorite things in the world, but they're just nice to pick up when I just need a story that I know is kind of predictable. I know the characters, it doesn't feel like anything new, and I often feel like I need just a cleanser story that doesn't take up a lot of brain space, but I enjoy, and so these are them. So this is following Lord Ingram, which is a close friend of Charlotte Holmes, and he is wrapped up in a mystery where he is looked at as the suspect of a murder, and so she has to help him. And one thing about these books is that they're all intertwined, so you do need to read them in order because they have standalone mysteries, but there's also a bigger theme running through them all that are tying to, I think, one of the books coming up. So I would recommend reading these in order. And then this one is a heist type story where someone comes and is a old friend of Mrs. Watson, and there's like a heist situation that they have to perform, and it's a bunch of the characters have to do this. I think I like this one the most so far. It was the most like action-y. It had more of a faster paced plot, which I enjoyed, and I just enjoyed seeing all the characters having to work together in a way that they haven't before. So this one was my favorite, but I did find this one interesting. So yeah, I think there's 6 books out in the series, and I've just been having a good time with them. Then I finished my favorite series that I've started this year, which is The Sinister Mystery of the Mesmerizing Girl. It's the Extraordinary Tales of the Athena Club, and I swear if this was like a long series, I would just continue to read them. The 3 books are a trilogy, and they all lead up from like a first mystery all the way through, so they're not like standalones. I really enjoyed all the sister like found family dynamics in this, which if you've been here for a while, you know I'm a sucker for. So I think that this was a really good conclusion. I think that it's not my favorite out of all of them. I think that the second one, The European Travel for a Monstrous Gentlewoman, that one's my favorite out of the trilogy. But I think that this wrapped up really nicely, and it also kind of left it open that if she wanted to write more in the series, she really could. This captures the feeling different and coming together in like that found family and accepting each other for who you are, even though you can bicker and things like that, and the sister dynamics really well. I also really love the way it weaved in older stories. I really have found that I like retellings, and it's not that they have to stick to it, but how they take retellings and change them to fit the story that's being told. And this has tons of different characters that are representations of different stories. So there's Frankenstein, there's Jekyll and Hyde, there's Dracula, and I really just enjoy that. And I think this setting made just for such an interesting mystery and fantasy. Like they intersected really well, because it's not high fantasy, but it just gave a little intrigue to the whole mystery, historical mystery like genre. So I really enjoyed this, and I'm really happy I've read the series this year. It has become a favorite for sure. So now on to one that I didn't really like, which is Mr. Penumbra's 24-Hour Bookstore. I read that in my reading vlog for Reading for 24 Hours, and I just really thought that this was going to be something different than it was. It's very technology heavy. So this is about a guy who starts work at this bookstore and notices that customers aren't really buying things. They're checking out these books in the back, and he and his friends start to like look into what these books are and start to uncover this huge mystery, conspiracy, secret society type thing. There's a lot about Google in here. There's a lot about technology in here that I just don't vibe with. I thought that I wasn't a science fiction person, and I think upon like reading this and some other stories, I found that it's not science that I don't like, because my favorite series, the Rexford and Sloan series, has different science in each one, and I really love that. But I think it's the technology-based stories I don't love as much. So this just talks a lot about computers, talks a lot about coding, talks a lot about Google. I couldn't really get myself to care about those things, but also the characters were so hard to connect to. The main character, Clay, in here, I just really didn't enjoy, and the female character that's written in here, I just feel like she had no personality outside of the fact that she works at Google. And I also felt like this story was supposed to be like profound in what it's talking about, and without giving anything away, there's a build up to this one thing that they're searching for, and I felt like it was supposed to be profound, but I've read stories that did this so much better than this one, and I just feel like this didn't really get to what Robin Sloan was like trying to get to the point of. So it was just a very big disappointment for me, which is sad because I really did think I was going to love it, because it was like supposed to be kind of mysterious bookstore type thing, and instead it was like mostly Google, some bookstore, and yeah, that feels harsh, but that's how I felt about it. I felt like you wanted to be on my lap. You were looking up at me like you did. So now I have a friend on my lap. He really wanted to cuddle. The next book I read is Legendborn by Tracy Deonn, and I actually really had a good time with this. I was a little hesitant because while I think the plot sounded really interesting, it is a YA fantasy, and I just haven't been in the YA fantasy reading mood for a while now. And this is a Arthur retelling, so I was super excited about that. And it's basically about this girl, Bree, who her mom dies at the beginning of the story, and she has some questions about what happened to her mom, and she ends up going to this college that her mom used to go to, and finds herself entwined with a secret society that may have the answers to her mom's death, because she starts to believe that her mom's death wasn't really an accident. She wants to get answers for it, and then she starts discovering stuff about herself, and it's an Arthur retelling. It's a YA fantasy. There's some angst with some romance and just in general like a coming of age story, but it also talks about topics like racism, and they're in, I think it's North Carolina, at this school, and so there's a lot of discussion too about her being a black woman at this school that has historically been for white people, and the secret society as well that she is trying to infiltrate. I found this to be a really good YA fantasy. I really connected with Brie, and I think that she just was such an interesting character to follow, and I really enjoyed the like secret society aspects. I love Arthurian retelling, so I was all about it, and I think it was a really strong YA. I really enjoyed it, and it showed me how I should be pickier with what YA I pick up, because I just really did enjoy this. So then this book I read, and this is the fifth or I think the sixth book in the Shauna McGuire series that is The Wayward Children. This has also been a new favorite series of this year, and I've been reading one a month until the end of the year because the new book comes out in January. So this was the book I read in November. This is following Reagan, and she loves horses, and one day she is at school and something happens that really upsets her, and she leaves, and then she finds a door to like a horse world. It's like centaurs and what are those things from The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe that are like goat and human? I can't remember the name. But there are a lot of like half human, half animal type creatures at this place, and she finds this herd, and it's just about her adventures there. And all these are really quick. They're really good stories about growing up and finding friends and just dealing with things that we do as humans. And I think each story is a little like unique, and each character has their own thing that they're going through, but there's this similar idea running through it, which is like acceptance of yourself and others. This one I enjoyed. I really connected with the one that was in the Goblin Market. That one was my favorite so far, but I think that this one was also really sweet. And this one, some of them have been kind of darker, and I didn't feel like this one was as dark as the rest of them and was just more of a sweet coming of age story, and I really enjoyed it, and I thought that it was just really cozy, perfect read for November for me. So I had a good time with this. I tend to enjoy all of the books, and I fly through them, and they're just the perfect length for the kind of book that they are and the points that they're getting across, and I think Shauna McGuire just really does it well. So I'm excited to read the other two, the one that's out and then the one coming in January. So on to another book that was kind of lackluster for me, and that was Other Birds by Sarah Addison Allen. This is my first ever Sarah Addison Allen. I've heard of Garden Spells by her, so I may still try that one, but I think that I thought this was going to be super cozy, found family, because it says that it's an enchanting tale of lost souls, lonely strangers, secrets that shape us, and how the right flock can guide you home. And to me, that like I immediately thought that that was going to be so cozy, and it's following multiple perspectives, but the first perspective you get is a girl who she is coming from her parents' house. She's going to go to college, and her mom has passed away a long time ago, and her stepmom and her dad don't really care about her very much, and she goes and lives at this condo apartment that her mom used to own that's now hers in name. And then she just starts to make friends with everyone, and everyone's kind of going through their own thing. And there's also ghosts that get perspectives in here. When she moves there, one of the tenants pass away, and it's kind of supposed to be a mystery around what happened to this woman. And I think it was supposed to be like a lot of found family, and some of it was okay. Like I just didn't feel like it gave me that magical feeling or the warm and fuzzies like I was looking for. And maybe that was me having too high or different expectations on the book, but I just didn't think that this was as cozy or found family and like beautiful as I wanted it to be, especially because I thought it was going to be so magical, and it just didn't feel that way. I did like the ghost perspectives, and there were a couple stories in here that I did really like. Specifically, I liked Mac. He is a guy who is a chef, and he learned from this woman that kind of raised him, and you get to like see his story with her, and I just really enjoyed that story, but the other stories I just didn't connect with quite as much. So it was unfortunately a bit of a flop for me. I wouldn't say it's a horrible book. I was just wanting more, and I wanted to feel more from this than I did. Then I have another flop, and that was The Scandalous Sisterhood of Prickwillow Place by Julie Berry. I picked this up because I thought it was going to be a fun Victorian middle grade murder mystery. There were a couple things that bugged me about it, but also I understand that I'm not the readership for this. But I did feel like some of it was a little too on the nose. So basically it's these girls who, for whatever reason, did something wrong at home, or their parents send them to this home, and they have a woman who looks after them, and then her brother. And they're not very fond of this woman, and she, at dinner, her and her brother fall dead, and they know that they were poisoned, and now they're trying to basically figure out what actually happened to them, but also trying to not let people in the town know that these people have died because they don't want to be sent away. And so they're trying to cover up the murder of these two people. Each girl is supposed to have something that she's insecure about, or something that marks her as different. Got Dear Roberta, Dull Martha, Disgraceful Mary Jane, Pocked Louise, Dour Eleanor, Stout Alice, and Smooth Kitty. And they call each other that through the whole book and use those full sentences. And it got one, repetitive, but two, I just think it was a little too on the nose, that there was a different way to go about it. It just was trying to be for me, a little too much in your face. And it was just not, I think it wasn't as well done as I've seen in other middle grades and stuff. It just wasn't as believable. And then the mystery itself I thought was fun, but it just wasn't, it was a little hard to believe. And they read a lot older than I think that for a middle grade. I know partially that I'm way older than the age range, so I may be being a little more picky, but I just really didn't enjoy this and the way I wanted to. And I just think that I tend to like middle grade fantasy, and I don't know if middle grade mystery will really be for me, especially a historical mystery like this. I didn't really love it. The last two books I had, I really loved. So let's start with, I read Moon of the Crusted Snow by Wabeshik Rice. And when I say this terrified me, I mean it terrified me. And I had nightmares for days. And I will never read another book like it, unless maybe the sequel that is going to come out. But it was just, I realized I have a trigger for this. And it's this book in a nutshell. It's my worst nightmare. But that being said, I loved this book. It's a book I will recommend, but know that there are a lot of triggers. If you want to be scared. So it's a very slow, it's called a chiller, I think. Well, it's described as chilling, and I would agree. It's very chilling. This is mainly following Evan, but I do think you get a couple perspectives throughout the story, and I can't remember. And basically the power goes out one day, and they're in a Anishinaabe community in Canada, and it's pretty remote. And winter's approaching, and they kind of are used to some power outages, but then the power just never comes back on, and they're trying to figure out what's going on. And it's a post-apocalyptic type thriller of what this community has to do to survive when the power has just gone out. And it's approaching winter, and then winter comes during the story. It was it started off where I was oh, well, this isn't too bad. And then there's a scene in here from this one person coming to their town, and oh my goodness, I just no, it was these two people coming to their town, and I just really, from then on, I could not put it down, but I also was terrified. I just realized, honestly, this is my worst nightmare. It's not as much about, the survival parts as it is the look at what humans will do to survive. This just discusses it so well, and yeah, it's just both terrifying and such a good story. And I think that his writing was really good. That's why I would pick up the next one. It's supposed to be 10 years after this, but I could never do another post-apocalyptic, the world is ending type story. That's supposed to be a thriller. Maybe if it's a fun fantasy, I don't know. But thriller horror, no thank you. No thank you. I still think about it. I still think about it on drives. Yeah. I would highly recommend, but at your own caution. It's a quiet horror to me, if that's a category. It's a surprisingly scary, quiet horror. And then on the opposite spectrum of that, but loved it as well, is Before the Coffee Gets Cold by Toshikazu Kawaguchi. And this is my one of my new favorite books too. It is about a time traveling cafe where you can go in and you can go back in time to the past, but you have to come back before your coffee gets cold, and there's other rules that are explained throughout the book. And it's got 4 separate stories of 4 separate people who are going to travel in this cafe. The first one really makes you think like, oh, this is sweet, and then the rest just kick you in the gut. I cried a lot, and I know for some people this just didn't hit. It felt like maybe a little dry is one of the critiques I've heard. But for me, it was just perfect, and I really, really enjoyed it. And I think I said in the reading vlog that I didn't think it would become a favorite, but as time has gone on, I just keep thinking about it, and it's become a favorite for me. So apparently it did sneak in there. I also got the next 2 in the series, so I think that qualifies it as a new favorite. But I just think that it did the time travel really well. It was very light on the sci-fi side of that. It feels like a slice of life story that also had a bit of fantasy speculative elements in it. I think that the stories themselves, they all connected in a way too, so it was really cool because like as the story was going on, you could get glimpses of like who the next story might be about. It hit me in the feels right when I needed it to. I think it was a perfect for this time of year to read, and it was like a great length as well, and I just really connected with it, and I would recommend it if you're looking for like a cozy story, and the vibes, the coffee shop vibes, really there. So I really enjoyed it. I would highly recommend it. So these are all the books that I got to, and I do feel still in a bit of a slump, but I think now that I've resigned myself to just mood reading and not worrying about anything else, I think that it's going a lot better. So I just want to say thank you for watching my channel, and I hope that you enjoyed this video, and if you want to leave a comment down below and let me know what your favorite book of the month was, I would really like it. And if you want to subscribe and, you know, did I say like this video? I don't remember. Anyway, thank you for watching. I really do appreciate it, and I will see you next time.